Jake Phillips woke up to the sound of mining equipment humming outside his window. The sun never rose on New Haven because it was a moon, but the artificial lights made it feel like morning anyway. He had been the boss of this place for 3 years now, watching over 10,000 people who called this rocky moon their home. The mining colony sat on Kepler 442c, a moon rich with metals that Earth needed badly for building spaceships and space stations. Jake pulled on his uniform and walked through the long metal hallways that connected all the buildings on New Haven. Children ran past him on their way to school, while their parents headed to work in the mines. This place had become more than just a work site over the years. People had built real lives here, with families and friends and dreams for the future doctor. Lisa Morgan was already at work in the medical center when Jake stopped by for his morning coffee. She had been on New Haven for 2 years, taking care of everyone from small cuts to broken bones from mining accidents. She smiled and handed him a cup of the terrible coffee they all had to drink because real coffee costs too much to ship from Earth. "How are the new families settling in?" Jake asked as he sipped the bitter drink. "Pretty well," Lisa said while checking her medical supplies. "The Johnson kids are still having trouble with the low gravity, but they will get used to it. Most kids do within a few weeks." Jake nodded and looked out the small window at the mining platforms in the distance. Giant machines worked day and night, pulling valuable metals from the ground. The work was hard and dangerous, but it paid well enough that families could build good lives here. Some people even liked it better than Earth because there was less crime and everyone knew everyone else. The warning sirens started screaming at exactly 11:47 in the morning. Jake dropped his coffee cup and ran to the command center, where his team was already looking at their screens with confused faces. Large objects were showing up on their sensors, coming from deep space toward New Haven. "What are we looking at?" Jake asked as he stared at the main screen. "Unknown ships," said Captain Nina Brooks, his security chief. "Big ones. They are not responding to our radio calls." The ships were massive, longer than anything humans had ever built. They looked like silver knives cutting through space, and they were moving fast toward the colony. Jake had never seen anything like them, and neither had anyone else on his team. "Try all the emergency channels," Jake ordered. Maybe they are from Earth and having radio problems. But deep down, he knew these ships were not human. They moved wrong, looked wrong, and ignored every attempt at contact. As they got closer, Jake could see weapons on their hulls, weapons that looked like nothing Earth had ever made. The first energy beam hit the outer shields of New Haven at 12:15. The entire colony shook like it was in an earthquake, and emergency lights started flashing everywhere. Jake grabbed the wall to keep from falling as another beam hit the main power station. "All families to the emergency shelters," Jake shouted into his radio. "This is not a drill. Move now." But the alien ships were not interested in taking prisoners or demanding surrender. They fired their weapons over and over, cutting through the colony's defenses like they were made of paper. The shield generators exploded one by one, leaving New Haven completely open to attack Dr. Lisa. Morgan was helping injured people get to the medical shelter when she saw the first evacuation pods launching. Small ships carrying families shot out from the colony, trying to escape to safety. But the alien fighters were waiting for them. She watched in horror as the enemy ships hunted down each escape pod, destroying them with precise shots. "They are killing everyone," she whispered to herself as tears ran down her face. Jake tried to coordinate the evacuation from the command center, but there was nowhere to run. The alien ships surrounded New Haven completely, making sure nothing could escape. The colony that had taken 15 years to build was being torn apart in hours. The mining platforms exploded in huge balls of fire as the aliens destroyed everything they could find. The school where children had been learning that morning was now a twisted pile of metal floating in space. The homes where families had lived and loved were gone forever. In the end, only 7 escape pods made it past the alien blockade out of the hundreds that launched. 7 small ships carrying maybe 50 people out of 10,000. Jake Phillips was not on any of them. He stayed at his post, sending out emergency signals to Earth until the command center was destroyed around him. The aliens worked for 6 More hours, making sure nothing useful was left of New Haven. Then they simply left, disappearing back into deep space as quietly as they had come. Behind them floated the remains of what had once been humanity's proudest achievement in space, now nothing but debris and the ghosts of 10,000 innocent people. Admiral Sam Carter was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency signals from New Haven reached. Terra Prime. The orbital defense station hung above Earth like a giant metal guardian, protecting the home planet from any threats that might come from space. Sam had been in charge here for 5 years, ever since the Mars Rebellion had finally ended. The signals came in broken pieces at first, just fragments of desperate calls for help. Then the automatic emergency beacons started broadcasting, sending the same terrible message over and over. New Haven was gone, 10,000 people were dead. Unknown alien ships had attacked without warning. Sam crushed his coffee cup in his hand as he read the reports. He had fought in wars before, but this was different. The Mars rebels had been human, fighting over politics and resources. This was something else entirely. Something that had decided humanity needed to die. Captain. Nina Brooks ran into his office with more bad news. She was young but smart, one of the best tactical officers Sam had ever worked with. Her face was pale as she handed him a datapad with the latest information. "The survivors say there were hundreds of ships," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Each one bigger than our largest cruiser. They had weapons that went right through our shields like they were not even there." Sam studied the blurry images that the escape pods had managed to record. The alien ships looked like nothing in any Earth database. They were smooth and deadly, built by minds that thought differently than humans. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that could cut through metal like it was butter. "Any word from Earth Command?" Sam asked as he walked to the main command center. "They are calling an emergency meeting," Nina replied. "But Admiral, the aliens are not done. Long-range sensors show them moving toward the outer colonies. They are going to hit Eden's Rest next." Eden's Rest was an agricultural colony with 2 million people. If the aliens attacked it the same way they had attacked New Haven, it would be a massacre beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Sam felt anger building in his chest, the kind of cold rage that had made him famous during the Mars Rebellion. But anger would not save those people. He needed weapons that could fight these aliens, and humanity did not have them. Their best ships and strongest weapons had been useless against the alien technology. Earth needed something new, something the aliens would not expect. "Get me Dr. Alex Rodriguez," Sam ordered. Priority 1 communication. Dr. Rodriguez worked at a secret facility on the dark side of the moon, where Earth's brightest scientists worked on projects that officially did not exist. Sam had visited the place once, and what he saw there had given him nightmares for weeks. They were building weapons based on theories that most people thought were impossible. The video call connected after a few minutes, showing Rodriguez in his laboratory surrounded by machines that hummed with dangerous energy. The scientist looked tired, like he had not slept in days. Behind him, Sam could see other researchers working frantically on something big and complicated. "Admiral Carter," Rodriguez said before Sam could speak. "I heard about New Haven. How long do we have?" "Maybe 72 hours before they hit Eden's Rest," Sam replied. "Can your weapons work?" Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, looking at something off-screen. Project Nemesis had been in development for 10 years, eating up billions of dollars in the best minds on Earth. The quantum resonance disruptors were supposed to be able to destroy matter at the atomic level, but they had never been tested on anything bigger than a small asteroid. "The theory is sound," Rodriguez finally said. "But Admiral, these weapons could be dangerous to us too. One mistake, and we could tear apart space itself." "Doctor," Sam said slowly, 10,000 people died yesterday because we were not ready. 2 million more will die tomorrow if we do nothing. I would rather risk tearing apart space than watch humanity get wiped out by aliens who think we are easy targets." Rodriguez nodded and turned to shout orders at his team. "We will have 3 prototypes ready in 60 hours, he promised. "But we will need ships to mount them on, and crews brave enough to test untried weapons in combat." Sam was already thinking about which ships to use and which captains to trust with humanity's most dangerous secret, the experimental destroyer. HMS Retribution was fast and tough, perfect for testing new weapons. Captain Pete Johnson was crazy enough to volunteer for a suicide mission if it meant fighting back against the aliens. "Nina," Sam called to his tactical officer, "send a message to every ship in the fleet. I want volunteers for a special mission. Tell them it is dangerous and experimental, but it might be our only chance to hit back at these bastards." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every captain in the fleet wanted to fight, wanted revenge for the innocents who had died at New Haven. Sam chose the 3 best ships and the 3 bravest captains. Knowing he might be sending them to their deaths over the next 2 days, Sam watched the alien fleet move closer to Eden's Rest while Rodriguez and his team worked around the clock to finish the weapons. The quantum disruptors were huge and complicated, requiring most of a ship's power just to fire once. They had never been tested in real combat, and the scientists were not even sure they would work at all, but they were humanity's only hope. Traditional weapons had failed completely against the alien technology. Earth needed something new, something that would level the playing field and show these aliens that humanity was not going to die quietly. On the morning of the 3rd day, Rodriguez called with the news Sam had been waiting for. "The weapons are ready," he said. "God help us all." Sam looked out at the stars and thought about the families on Eden's Rest who had no idea what was coming for them. He thought about the children on New Haven who would never grow up, and the miners who had died doing honest work to build a better future for humanity. "Nina," he said quietly, "launch the fleet." Dr. Alex Rodriguez had spent his whole life studying how matter worked at the smallest levels, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He stood on the bridge of the HMS Retribution as it moved through space toward the alien fleet that was attacking Eden's Rest. The quantum resonance disruptor took up most of the ship's weapon bay, a massive machine that hummed with dangerous energy. Captain Pete Johnson was a good man for this job because he was not afraid of dying. He had volunteered immediately when Admiral Carter asked for crews to test the new weapons. Pete knew the disruptor might destroy his own ship along with the enemy, but he also knew that 2 million people were counting on them to stop the aliens. "Doctor, how does this thing work exactly?" Pete asked as they got closer to the battle. "Zone." Rodriguez looked at the weapon controls and tried to explain it in simple terms. "We send out waves of energy that make the tiny pieces of matter stop sticking together. If it works, the alien ships will just fall apart like sandcastles." "And if it does not work?" Pete asked. "Then we die?" Rodriguez said honestly. "But the aliens kill us anyway if we do nothing." Through the bridge windows they could see Eden's Rest burning. The agricultural colony was huge, with dozens of space stations and farming platforms spread across the moon's orbit. The alien fleet was systematically destroying everything, just like they had done at New Haven. Evacuation ships were trying to escape, but the alien fighters were hunting them down one by one. Pete felt anger burning in his chest as he watched innocent people die. These aliens had not tried to talk or make demands. They just wanted to kill every human they could find. Well, today they were going to learn that humans could kill too. "All ships, this is Captain Johnson," Pete said into his radio. "We are going to test the new weapon on their biggest ship first. Everyone else stay back until we see what happens." The alien dreadnought was enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. It floated in space like a metal mountain, firing massive energy beams that could destroy a space station with one shot. Its hull was smooth and silver, made from materials that Earth scientists had never seen before. Rodriguez powered up the quantum disruptor while Pete aimed the ship at their target. The weapon drew so much energy that the lights dimmed throughout the Retribution. Warning alarms started beeping as the ship's reactor worked harder than it was designed to handle. "Target locked," Pete announced. "Doctor, you may fire when ready." Rodriguez took a deep breath and pressed the firing button. The quantum disruptor did not make a sound or flash of light like normal weapons. Instead, it sent out invisible waves of energy that existed between dimensions, reaching across space to touch the alien dreadnought. For a few seconds, nothing seemed to happen. The huge alien ship kept firing at the colony below, apparently unaffected by the strange new weapon. Rodriguez felt his heart sink as he wondered if all their work had been for nothing. Then the impossible began to happen. The alien ship's hull started to ripple like water in a pond. The smooth silver metal began to lose its shape, becoming soft and unstable. Small pieces started to break away and dissolve into nothing. "My God," Pete whispered as he watched the kilometer-long ship begin to fall apart. The quantum resonance spread through the alien vessel like a disease, making the atoms lose their ability to hold together. Within seconds, the massive dreadnought was coming apart at the molecular level. Its weapons stopped firing as the energy systems dissolved. Its engines went quiet as the reactor chamber scattered into individual particles. In less than a minute, the most powerful ship in the alien fleet had simply ceased to exist. Where there had been a mountain of metal and technology, now there was only empty space filled with a thin cloud of loose atoms, but the terror was just beginning. The quantum resonance did not stop with one ship. It jumped from the destroyed dreadnought to the other alien vessels that were flying too close together. Ship after ship began to ripple and dissolve as the energy waves spread through their formation like wildfire. Rodriguez watched in amazement and horror as an entire alien battle group just melted away. Dozens of ships that had seemed unstoppable just minutes before were now nothing but atomic dust floating in space. The weapon had worked better than his wildest dreams, and that scared him more than failure would have. "Captain," called his communications officer, "the remaining alien ships are retreating. They are leaving the system as fast as they can." Pete looked at the tactical display and saw that the surviving aliens were indeed running away. The ships that had been far enough apart to avoid the quantum resonance were fleeing toward deep space, abandoning their attack on Eden's Rest completely. "All ships, pursue and destroy," Pete ordered, but Rodriguez grabbed his arm. "Wait," the scientist said urgently. "We need to let some of them escape." "Why?" Pete demanded. "They were trying to wipe out humanity." "Because they need to go home and tell their people what happened here," Rodriguez explained. "They need to spread the word that humanity has weapons that can unmake matter itself. Fear is going to be our best defense from now on." Pete thought about that for a moment, then slowly nodded. He ordered the human fleet to stop their pursuit and let the surviving aliens escape. The few enemy ships that remained disappeared into hyperspace, carrying news of humanity's terrifying new weapon back to wherever they came from. As the Retribution returned to Eden's Rest to help with rescue operations, Rodriguez stared out at the empty space where an alien fleet had been just an hour before. The quantum disruptor had worked perfectly, maybe too perfectly. They now had a weapon that could destroy entire fleets in minutes, but using it felt like opening a door that could never be closed again. The aliens had started this war by murdering innocent people, but humanity was going to finish it with weapons that could unmake the very fabric of reality. Rodriguez wondered if they were still the good guys, or if the universe was about to learn that humans could be scarier than any alien nightmare. On Eden's Rest, 2 million people were alive because of what they had done today. But across the galaxy, other species were about to discover that humanity was no longer prey. They had become something much more dangerous, and the universe would never be the same again. Commander Kate Sullivan was the best codebreaker Earth had ever produced, but the alien language was like nothing she had ever seen before. She worked in a secret facility deep underground where humanity's intelligence services tried to understand their enemies. The Zephyrians, as they had started calling the aliens, used sounds and symbols that human throats could not make and human eyes could barely see, but fear was a universal language. And the alien messages that Kate intercepted after the battle at Eden's Rest were full of it. Even though she could not translate the exact words, the panic in the alien voices was clear. They had seen their most powerful ships simply dissolve into nothing, and they did not understand how it was possible. The quantum weapon worked better than we hoped, Kate told President Henry Walsh during their secure video call. The surviving aliens are broadcasting emergency signals across their entire territory. Whatever they are saying, it has their whole empire scared. President Walsh looked tired but determined as he sat in the Oval Office surrounded by his top advisors. The alien attack on New Haven had caught everyone by surprise, but humanity's response at Eden's Rest had surprised them even more. Now he had to decide what to do with the most powerful weapon ever created. "How many of these disruptors can we build?" the president asked. "Dr. Rodriguez says his team can produce one per week with current resources," Kate replied. "But if we give him unlimited funding and manpower, he thinks he can make 10 per week within a month." The president nodded slowly. Earth's entire military was being rebuilt around the new weapons. Every ship in the fleet was being modified to carry quantum disruptors, and new vessels were being designed specifically to use them. Humanity was preparing for a war unlike anything they had ever fought before. Meanwhile, Admiral Carter was coordinating the defense of human space from his command center on Terra Prime. Long-range sensors showed that the Zephyrian Empire was huge, spanning dozens of star systems. But after what happened at Eden's Rest, their fleets were pulling back from human territory like humanity had some kind of disease. "They are afraid of us now," Captain Nina Brooks observed as she studied the tactical displays. "Their ships not come within 50 light-years of any human colony." "Good," Admiral Carter replied grimly. "Let them be afraid. Maybe it will save some lives on both sides." But the Admiral knew this was just the beginning. The Zephyrians had started this war by committing genocide against innocent humans. They had shown no mercy and asked for no surrender. Now humanity had to decide how far they were willing to go to make sure it never happened again. Dr. Rodriguez was working around the clock in his lunar laboratory, pushing his team to build more weapons as fast as possible. The quantum disruptors were incredibly complex, requiring rare materials and precise engineering. Each one took hundreds of hours to assemble and test, but Rodriguez knew that every weapon they built could protect millions of human lives. The scientist had not slept. In 3 days, when Captain Pete Johnson visited his lab, the captain of the HMS Retribution had become something of a hero after the battle at Eden's Rest, but he looked troubled as he watched the weapons being assembled. "Doctor," Pete said quietly, "do you ever worry about what we are becoming?" Rodriguez stopped working and looked at the man who had first used humanity's most terrible weapon. "What do you mean, Captain?" "These things can destroy matter itself," Pete explained. "We are building weapons that could theoretically destroy planets, maybe even stars. What happens when other species decide they need weapons like this to protect themselves from us?" It was a question that kept Rodriguez awake at night. The quantum disruptors worked by disrupting the fundamental forces that held atoms together. In theory, there was no limit to how much matter they could affect. A large enough disruptor could unmake an entire world, turning billions of people into atomic dust in seconds. The Zephyrians made their choice when they attacked New Haven, Rodriguez said finally. They could have tried to communicate with us, could have asked us to leave their territory, could have done 100 different things. Instead, they chose genocide. Now they have to live with the consequences. President Walsh made his decision 3 days later. In a speech broadcast to every human settlement in the galaxy, he announced that Earth would not stop with just defending their colonies. The Zephyrians had shown what they were capable of, and humanity could not risk them rebuilding their fleets and trying again. "We did not choose this war," the president said, his voice carrying across space to millions of humans. "But we will end it. The aliens who destroyed New Haven will face justice, and any species that threatens humanity will learn that we are not the weak prey they thought we were." The speech was also broadcast towards Zephyrian space, along with recordings of what the quantum disruptors had done to their fleet. Kate Sullivan made sure the aliens understood the message. Humanity was no longer hiding or running. They were coming within weeks. Quantum disruptors were being installed on everything from destroyers to orbital defense platforms. Human space became a fortress bristling with weapons that could unmake matter itself. Any alien ship that entered human territory without permission would simply cease to exist. The psychological effect on other species was immediate and dramatic. The hegemony, a loose alliance of advanced civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, sent urgent diplomatic messages to Earth. They wanted to talk, to negotiate, to make sure humanity understood that not all aliens were enemies. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers, who had never communicated with any other species, began sending strange signals toward Earth. Nobody knew what the messages meant, but the fact that they were communicating at all suggested they were taking humanity very seriously. But the Zephyrians remained silent. Their fleets had withdrawn to the heart of their empire, apparently preparing for humanity's inevitable counterattack. Intelligence reports suggested they were building new weapons and fortifications, but Kate Sullivan doubted it would matter. Nothing they built could stand against weapons that worked at the quantum level. Admiral Carter studied star charts as he planned humanity's next move. The Zephyrian homeworld was heavily defended and far from human space. It would take months to reach it, and the aliens would have time to prepare. But Carter was not worried about their defenses. He had something they could never build or steal or copy. He had weapons that could erase them from existence and the will to use them. The aliens had wanted to exterminate humanity, but they had made a terrible mistake. They had picked a fight with a species that was very good at learning from their enemies and even better at destroying them completely. 6 months after the massacre at New Haven, Admiral Sam Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship UES Thunderstrike as the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared to jump into Zephyrian space. 50 ships carried quantum disruptors each, one capable of erasing entire enemy fleets from existence. Operation Payback was about to begin, and there would be no mercy for the aliens who had started this war. Captain Tony Martinez commanded the assault ship Use Vengeance, one of the newest vessels in the fleet. His ship was built specifically to carry the most powerful quantum disruptors ever created, weapons that could affect matter across vast distances. Tony had lost his brother in the attack on New Haven, and he was eager to make the aliens pay for what they had done. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," Captain Nina Brooks announced from her position at the tactical station. She had been promoted after the victory at Eden's Rest and now served as Admiral Carter's fleet coordinator. The young officer had become an expert at using the quantum weapons, understanding their capabilities better than anyone except Dr. Rodriguez himself. The jump to Zephyrian space took 3 days, during which the human fleet traveled through the strange realm between dimensions where faster-than-light travel was possible. When they emerged near the alien homeworld of Veltar, they found exactly what intelligence reports had predicted. The planet was surrounded by the largest defensive fleet the Zephyrians had ever assembled. Hundreds of alien warships floated in perfect formation around their homeworld, creating layers of protection that stretched from the planet's surface to the edge of the star system. Massive orbital stations bristled with weapons that could destroy human ships with single shots. The Zephyrians had spent months preparing for this attack, building defenses that would have been impossible for any conventional fleet to overcome. But Admiral Carter was not commanding a conventional fleet. His ships carried weapons that worked at the fundamental level of reality itself, making traditional defenses useless. The aliens had built their fortress assuming that humans would fight like every other species in the galaxy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Dr. Sophie Turner," Admiral Carter called to the fleet's xenobiologist, "are you monitoring their communications?" Dr. Turner nodded from her station where she tracked alien radio signals and tried to understand what the Zephyrians were saying to each other. "They know we are here, Admiral. Their commanders are sending orders to all ships, but they sound confident. I think they believe their defenses will hold." "They are about to learn otherwise," Admiral Carter replied coldly. "All ships, begin resonance bombardment. Target their orbital stations first, then work your way through their fleet formations." The quantum disruptors fired simultaneously, sending invisible waves of destruction across space toward the Zephyrian defenses. The aliens had no idea what was coming until their orbital stations began to ripple and dissolve like sandcastles hit by ocean waves. Captain Martinez watched through his ship's sensors as the massive defensive platforms simply came apart at the atomic level. Structures that had taken years to build and were strong enough to withstand nuclear weapons just stopped existing in the space of a few seconds. Where there had been metal and technology, now there was only empty vacuum. "My God," whispered Martinez as he saw the scope of destruction the human weapons could cause. "We are not just destroying their ships, we are erasing them from reality." The Zephyrian fleet tried to respond, firing their most powerful weapons at the human ships. But their energy beams could not reach targets that were attacking from dimensions the aliens did not even know existed. The quantum disruptors struck from angles that made no sense to three-dimensional thinking, bypassing shields and armor as if they were not there. Admiral Carter felt no satisfaction as he watched entire squadrons of alien ships dissolve into atomic clouds. This was not a battle, it was an execution. But he remembered the children who had died at New Haven, the families who had been murdered without warning or mercy. The Zephyrians had chosen this path when they decided that genocide was an acceptable way to expand their territory. "Admiral," Dr. Turner called out urgently, "they are broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. They want to stop fighting." "Too late for that," Admiral Carter replied without emotion. "They should have thought about surrender before they killed 10,000 innocent people." Continue the bombardment. The quantum disruptors kept firing, and the Zephyrian fleet kept dissolving. Ship after ship simply ceased to exist as the resonance waves propagated through their formations. The aliens tried to spread out to avoid the cascade effect, but the human weapons had too much range and power. Nothing in the Zephyrian arsenal could survive contact with forces that worked at the subatomic level within 2 hours, the most heavily defended world in Zephyrian space lay completely exposed. Every orbital station was gone, every defensive satellite had been erased, and the proud alien fleet was nothing but a thin cloud of particles floating in space. But the human fleet was not finished yet. "Target their military installations on the planet's surface," Admiral Carter ordered. "Weapon factories, army bases, government buildings. Show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The quantum bombardment continued, reaching down through the planet's atmosphere to touch military targets on the ground. Zephyrian army bases simply vanished as their atoms lost cohesion. Weapons factories that had been building ships to fight humans dissolved into nothing. The government buildings where the decision to attack New Haven had been made were erased from existence. Captain Martinez monitored the alien communications as the bombardment continued. The Zephyrians were screaming in their clicking language, begging for mercy that would not come. Their leaders were broadcasting desperate pleas for negotiation, offering anything if the humans would just stop destroying their civilization. But humanity's response was cold and calculated. This was not about conquest or territory. This was about making sure that no alien species would ever again think that humans were easy targets. The message being sent was simple: attack humanity and face complete annihilation. "Admiral," Captain Brooks reported, "we have eliminated all military targets on the planet. Their capacity to make war has been completely destroyed." Admiral Carter looked at the tactical display showing Veltar floating defenseless in space. The Zephyrian homeworld still had billions of civilian inhabitants, but their military was gone forever. Their government had collapsed, their fleets were atomic dust, and their ability to threaten anyone was finished. "All ships," Admiral Carter announced to his fleet, "mission accomplished. The Zephyrians no longer pose a threat to humanity or anyone else. Let this be a lesson to the galaxy about what happens when you underestimate human resolve." As the human fleet prepared to return home, long-range sensors detected something unexpected. Ships from other alien species were approaching Zephyrian space, but they were not coming to fight. They carried diplomatic flags and were broadcasting peaceful intentions. Word of humanity's devastating victory was already spreading across the galaxy, and other civilizations wanted to make sure they did not become the next target. The war that had started with genocide at New Haven was ending with humanity as the most feared species in the galaxy. The quantum weapons had not just defeated the Zephyrians, they had announced to the universe that humans were no longer prey. They had become the apex predators, and every other species was scrambling to avoid their wrath. The war ended not with a peace treaty but with complete Zephyrian surrender. Admiral Sam Carter stood in his command center watching reports flood in from across known space. As news of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy, the Zephyrian military was gone, their government had collapsed, and their empire was in ruins. But more importantly, every other alien species now knew that humanity possessed weapons that could erase matter from existence. The hegemony was the first to respond. For thousands of years, this alliance of advanced species had ruled the galaxy through superior technology and coordinated military action. Now their ambassadors were requesting immediate meetings with human leaders using the most respectful, diplomatic language their translators could manage. They wanted to discuss trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchanges. Captain Pete Johnson, the hero of Eden's Rest, was assigned to escort the first hegemony delegation to Earth. As their ships approached human space, he could see the fear in their movements. The alien vessels kept their weapons powered down and broadcast peaceful intentions on every frequency. They knew what human quantum disruptors could do to their fleets. Captain Johnson, the hegemony ambassador, spoke through the translation. "Device, we want to assure humanity that our species have always respected the rights of developing civilizations." The Zephyrian actions were condemned by all civilized beings. Pete listened to the careful words and almost smiled. 6 months ago, these same aliens had ignored human expansion completely, treating Earth's colonies like they were too small to matter. Now they were calling humans equals and speaking about mutual respect. Fear was a powerful teacher. Dr. Alex Rodriguez continued his work in the lunar laboratory, but now with unlimited resources and support from every government on Earth. The quantum disruptor technology was being refined and improved every day. New versions could affect larger areas, work at greater distances, and required less power to operate. Humanity was not content to simply defend themselves anymore. "The applications go far beyond weapons," Rodriguez explained to President Henry Walsh during their weekly briefing. "We can use quantum resonance to terraform planets faster, mine asteroids more efficiently, and even manipulate matter at the molecular level. This technology could transform human civilization." But the president was more interested in the military applications. Earth was building a new fleet of ships designed specifically around quantum weapons. These vessels would patrol human space and beyond, making sure that no alien species ever again considered humanity weak enough to attack. Commander Kate Sullivan had become Earth's top expert on alien psychology through her intelligence work. She studied how different species reacted to humanity's new power, and what she found both amazed and worried her. The galaxy was full of ancient civilizations that had never encountered weapons like the quantum disruptors. "The Void Walkers are the most interesting case," Kate reported to the Intelligence Council. "They have been silent for millions of years, never communicating with any other species. But after our attack on Veltar, they started sending mathematical equations toward Earth. We think they are trying to understand how our weapons work." The Void Walkers were mysterious beings that lived in deep space, building strange structures around dead stars. Most species considered them myths or legends, but humanity's quantum weapons had apparently gotten their attention. Their mathematical messages suggested intelligence far beyond anything else in the galaxy. Meanwhile, the warrior clans of the Draconis sector had withdrawn all their forces from human borders without being asked. These aliens had built their entire culture around conquest and combat, but they wanted nothing to do with a species that could unmake their ships at the atomic level. Their retreat sent a clear message to every other military power in the galaxy. Captain Tony Martinez was given command of the new U.S. Retribution, humanity's most advanced quantum warfare vessel. His mission was to patrol the borders of human space and respond to any threats that might emerge. As he flew past the ruins of New Haven during his first patrol, he thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. We lost 10,000 people. Here, he told his crew as they observed a moment of silence for the dead. But their sacrifice taught us that we could not rely on others for protection. We had to become strong enough to protect ourselves no matter what the cost. The memorial station that had been built near New Haven's remains was a reminder of both humanity's vulnerability and their strength. Families came from across human space to remember the dead and to see where the war that changed everything had begun. The station also served as a warning to any aliens who might consider attacking human settlements. President Walsh's final address to the nation was broadcast not just to human colonies but to every known species in the galaxy. The message was translated into hundreds of alien languages and sent across space on the most powerful transmitters Earth could build. Humanity did not ask for this war, the president said as he stood before the joint session of the Global Council. We came to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship with other species. What we found were predators who mistook our peaceful nature for weakness. That mistake cost them everything. The galaxy will learn that humanity is no longer asking for permission to exist among the stars. We are taking our place as equals to any species, and as superiors to those who would threaten innocent life. Any civilization that wishes to coexist with us will find generous and loyal friends. Any that choose to threaten us will discover what the Zephyrians learned too late. The speech was followed by a demonstration of humanity's new orbital defense grid. Quantum disruptor platforms had been built around every human world, creating an impenetrable barrier that could destroy entire invasion fleets in minutes. The message was clear: human space was now the safest territory in the galaxy, and also the most dangerous to attack. Dr. Sophie Turner, who had monitored alien communications throughout the war, published her final report on how the conflict had changed galactic politics. Species that had never communicated before were forming alliances to share information about human capabilities. Trade routes were being rerouted to avoid human space. Some civilizations were even abandoning their own military programs, deciding that weapons were useless against enemies who could attack at the quantum level. Jake Phillips, one of the few survivors of New Haven, now served aboard the UES Retribution as Martinez's executive officer. As he looked out at the stars from the ship's observation deck, he thought about the friends and colleagues who had died in the first alien attack. Their deaths had awakened something in humanity that the galaxy was still learning to understand. We were explorers and scientists and farmers, Jake said to himself as he watched distant galaxies spin through space. But when they forced us to become warriors, we became the most dangerous warriors the universe had ever seen. Humanity's revenge had been swift and terrifying, but it had also been complete. The species that had once been prey was now the apex predator, and the galaxy would never again underestimate the determination of humans to protect their own. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be an age defined not by conquest, but by the absolute certainty that humanity would never again face extinction at the hands of aliens who thought they were weak.